Let the one who has two shoes sell one and buy a sword, and the one who has two trousers should sell one and buy a sword, because now it is a time for revolution, and this revolution is no longer on the streets. This revolution is not really on Facebook. This revolution is in the mind, because if change has not taken place here in the mind, there's nothing that we can do with our bodies that will bear fruits as we may expect. Peace and power to all the African families from wherever you happen to be. African families in the diaspora, African families at home, from the African Continental Unity Party. We greet you and we say peace and power. Today we are today we just want to discuss a subject that I think is very important. Is actually a question. The question is, who controls your ideology? It's very important. I thought about it. I said, let me share, because we are in the building process where we want to give Africa its initial dimension. And when we talk about its initial dimension, we look at all the potential that Africa has been given. And we believe, based on the potential that we have as African people, Africa has the capabilities of becoming a superpower in the world. And we are, at this moment, we are on our knees because of different reasons, internal as well as external reasons that have put us down. And our effort now is to actually reconstruct or to rebuild Africa, to make it a center for global power, or a global power base as we wish to make it. But the point is, who controls our ideology as African people? Who controls our ideology? We need to understand, because the one who controls your ideology controls your mind, controls your actions, and determine the outcome that you're gonna have to get out after everything that you do, or out of everything that you do. I'm gonna repeat that again. The one who controls your ideology, he also controls your mind, he controls your actions, and eventually he determines the result that you're going to have to reap out of everything that you do in life. So therefore, we need to understand exactly who is in charge of the ideology that we are using as African people. And from that point of view, if we have evaluated who is in charge of our ideology, then we will be able to determine, or even to predict, what kind of result we can get out of everything that we are doing. But why do we even talk about ideology? Why is it so important? Simple, because every people in the world, you may not realize it, but every people in the world have their ways, or their specific way of understanding the world, right? And based on that understanding of the world, actually, that understanding of the world, we call it a philosophy. Now, based on that understanding of the world, people will forge what we call an ideology. That ideology is simply the vision that people will make for themselves of how, what they have to become, and what they have to do to become what they want to become. That is what we talk about ideology. So let me rephrase myself. Every group of people, even at individual level, you may not realize it as yourself, but we all have a particular way in which we understand the world. And that is what we call philosophy. And that philosophy also inspires the vision that we'll have to, make of our future reality. And that becomes then ideology. So every actions that you do every day is inspired by your understanding of the world, or your understanding of your life. And definitely, that action that you do every day follows a particular ideology that you want to achieve in life. That ideology might become your personal goal, the vision that you have for yourself, where you want to see yourself in the next 5 years, when you want to see yourself in the next 20 years. That becomes then your ideology. And everything that you do in life you do to actually achieve that vision that you have set for yourself, for the future. It is actually the same thing at the personal level as well as a collective level, as a community, as a society. So us as African people, there should be a question, because indeed every problem, every situation in life is solved through the process of questions and answers. So we need to be able to ask ourselves the question that who is in charge of the ideology that we are using to do everything that we do every day as African people. Because if we are not in charge of our own ideology, if it's other people who are in charge of all of our own ideology, it means what we are doing, the things that have already been designed by the people who have obviously fastened our ideology, and they are able to determine what kind of results that we have to reap out of the actions that we do. And from that perspective, we cannot conquer, we cannot win this battle that we have in the world today. This should be very important. And one thing that we need to understand is that as a human beings, we have been designed to function through the formula that sometimes I call mind to action formula. It means that before you engage your hands, your body, to do anything that you want to do physically, you must firstly engage your mind to create a particular reality that your mind, your hands and body will now work to fulfill in the physical form. So in most cases, we turn, as African people, we turn to work much with our hands without actually looking into what our mind can create. And when we work with our hands, we work on the things, on the paradigm that has been shaped and created by people who sit down to think. And when they sit down to think, they create an ideology. And when we come to work with our hands, we only work according to the ideology which has been shaped by other people. So you may agree or not with that, but the fact here is that every people who sit down to think about any particular reality, the first thinking, or the first aspect of their thinking, is about solving their own problems first, is about their own interest before they think about other people. So you may think that is fine that European people should sit down and think about certain concepts, and us, we can just work on them. But what we don't realize is that we're actually working for them. We actually are fulfilling their design or their purpose, because when they sit down to think, to imagine a human society, a human reality, they imagine that from the perspective of their own interest, not from the perspective of the interests of other people. So it is important that us as African people, we should begin to engage deeply in thinking process, because every society, as I said, we are in that phase of rebuilding Africa, and every human society that finds itself in this phase of reconstruction or construction, it must first and foremost develop thinkers. It must invest itself in developing thinkers, because what thinkers do or philosophers do is to create a form or a blueprint of the society in the future. When we don't have an emphasis put on the thinkers, on the philosophers, then we don't have people who will obviously create a blueprint of a society that we all have to live in, a society that responds to our needs and to our problems, a society that reflects our value systems and our aspiration in life. So is what we actually need to understand at this particular moment, that we need to have our own ideology, which is actually being inspired by our own understanding of the world, which is a philosophy. Let me give you maybe an example so that you may understand. Every people, Chinese people, have their own philosophy and their own ideology. Indian people, the same. European people the same. Let's look, for instance, about European people. They have their own philosophy and their own ideology. Their philosophy, which means their understanding of the world, is inspired by their historical relationship with the environment, based on a scarcity of resources. They have now developed that philosophy of individualism, which means a man for himself. That is the philosophy of European people. That's why they emphasize more on the rights of individuals rather than on the rights of collective, which is actually the case for African people. So, based on the scarcity of resources, based on the environment which was hostile to European people, they have developed that philosophy, which means that understanding of the world is based on a man for himself, which, as I said, is called individualism. Now, that's understanding of the world based on individual values. It means individual rights are more important than collective rights. You can destroy the whole community, the whole society, for your individual's rights. That is why today we see what we call the environmental degradation that, according to statistics, have been in most cases created or accelerated or accentuated by only 100 companies in the world today. And those 100 companies are possessed, you can imagine, by 100 people, because they are private companies, private enterprises. So you have a situation whereby we are dealing now with, climate change, environmental degradation, and all other catastrophes that we know related to the global warmings. And this global situation is created by only 100 companies in the world, owned by 100 individuals. So in the Western thinking, the Western understanding of the world, the individual rights are more important than collective rights. That is why they can decimate an entire village, they can decimate an entire community, they can reap all the resources over which an entire community relied on, so that one individual can benefit out of that. That is the understanding of European. That is their understanding of the world, and based on that understanding, they have created their own ideology, and that ideology, we can call it white supremacy. It means white people or white color is above everything. So what matters in the world in most cases is not the talent, is not the ability, but is actually the color. The whiter you are, the luckier you are, or the more competent you are to have certain functions. And that is all about white supremacy, which in other words can be explained as a mistreatment of other people based on the color, right? For some of you who have read about Benjamin, I think this psychologist in America was called Benjamin, I think Benjamin Watch or something like that. He developed a philosophy or a disease called, discovered a disease called negritude. A negritude is a disease that he apparently discovered from black people, which means the darker you are, you have that disease, a disease that makes you a backward person, a disease that prevents you from thinking, a disease that prevents you from being a completely human being. Benjamin Watch, I'm not completely familiar with his surname, but his name is Benjamin something. So this is the understanding of white people, or the ideology of white people, which is based, as I said, on white supremacy, which means the more white you are, the more cleaner, the more fit you are, and the more darker you are, the more unfit you are, and the more actually third of human being you are. So we must understand their ideology and also their philosophy. Their philosophy is individualism, their ideology is white supremacy. Right, so now us as African people, it comes now to us as African people. What is our distinctive philosophy and what is our distinctive ideology? In other words, what is our understanding of the world? And what is the vision that we have about ourselves in the future? Or where do we see ourselves? Which is ideology. It is important whether we talk about different political parties, whether we talk about different economic system, us as African people, related to our environment, the resources that we have, the situation that we have gone through and that we are still going through now, we need to ask questions and answer to those questions because, as I said, every situation in life, whether individual life or collective life, will be solved through the process of questions and answers. If you are unable to ask questions about your reality, about your faith, about your life, you cannot solve that life or that reality. It's only when you ask questions, then the infinity of wisdom, the universe will then open, the doors of understanding, wisdom, and discovering, so that you can obviously come to the point where you discover a solution to your problems. Now we need to ask ourselves, what is our particular philosophy and what is our ideology? And in most cases, we have none, starting from those who are supposed to be our leaders and from to us as the masses. We don't have a particular philosophy and a particular ideology, because we can talk about Pan-Africanism, we can talk about all the efforts that we're doing every day to change Africa, but the question is, who really inspires the ideology over which we are basing the actions that we do to change Africa? And in most cases, you will find that the person who is in charge of our ideology that we are using to rebuild Africa is the same oppressor that never wanted to see Africa developing. Is the same who has designed the philosophy and the ideology. In other words, we are borrowing the understanding of European people of the world to inspire our efforts, our actions of African development, and that cannot produce any meaningful result according to what we expect in life. I'm going to give you a practical example. According to the understanding of Europeans of the world, and according to their own ideology of white supremacy, they sat down in Berlin Conference and they decide to break down Africa as a continent in small pieces or small group of people that have to be controlled and dominated. And they did that, right? And they did that and they achieved the result that they intended for in 1885 in the Berlin Conference. So now today, we as African people, we want to rise from the state where we are today of underdevelopment, the state where we are today of neo-colonialism, so that we can emerge again as a global power, a global center of world politics and world power. But we are still working according to the paradigm and ideology of the Western society. It means we are still embracing these small groups of people, small entities, or this balkanization of Africa that was created to give the Western power more authority over us. We are still embracing it. We are still bragging about our fake nationalities. We're bragging about how Congolese I am, how Zimbabwean I am, how South African, how Nigerian, how Ghanaian I am. We are embracing these things strongly, thinking that we are doing good to ourselves. No, we are doing good to the enemy who designed this particular ideology of fake nationality, because you did not create your country that you have currently in Africa. No, none of your ancestors created that country, whether you are from Zambia, whether you are from Nigeria, Ghana, whether you are from Ethiopia. You cannot name me one particular African fighter or one African ancestor who decided that let's make a country called Ethiopia, let's make a country called Zimbabwe, let's make a country called Nigeria or Congo. All these countries that we have are the project of your enemy and my enemy. But you are much into this, thinking that you are doing good to yourself. No, you are working to serve your oppressors, because they are the ones who sat down in the Berlin Conference to design an ideology that you are using today to work with. And this cannot be beneficial to you. It's going to be beneficial to themselves, because when they design these countries, they design them as corporations that will be working to build the Western world's economy. They didn't design Congo, they didn't divide Congo, Nigeria, Zimbabwe for the development of the so-called Congolese people or Nigerian people. They did that with one aim, which was to develop the economy of France, the economy of Belgium, the economy of England, the economy of Germany, economy of those countries who were present at the Berlin Conference. But the question is, why are you so much embracing this fake nationality? Why are you so much embracing this fake nationality? Whose ideology is that? Because the one who controls your ideology, as we said from the beginning, is able to control your thinking and your actions, and finally is able to determine the outcome, the result, or the future that you're going to have to reap out of all the actions that you do. So now let's answer this question. Do we think that our fake nationalities will solve our problem of African underdevelopment? The answer is simple, no. And one thing else that Europeans said, at the edge of modernization, they said that they justify themselves, they justify their development. They said they are more rational, and based on their rationality, that is why they had to think, to plan, and to work harder and to create the development that they have in Europe today. That is how the Western civilization justifies itself. It says its thinking, its mindset is based on rationality. And unlike us as African people, they said we are not rational people in most cases. We mostly act out of instinct rather than being rational people, planning, executing through a rational, process. That's what they say. And when you look what we are doing today, somewhere, somehow, you will find that we are giving justification to the Western world based on that assumption that we as African people, we are not rational. And why am I saying that? It's because based on their rationality, they found that the only way we can have to conquer African world is to break down, is to balkanize the continent in dividing it into small groups of people that will be controlled and dominated, right? And today, no matter who you talk to in terms of African thinkers, African philosophers, or African politicians, everyone knows that there is no one solution that we can come up with as African people to rebuild ourselves. There's no one solution that will undermine the unity of Africa. That is a rationale right there. Everyone knows that the unity of Africa is the key to the solution that we need to rebuild Africa as a global power base. But look at our actions. Can we see all our actions that we do every day as being inspired by rationality? No. Look what our leaders do. They know this is a solution. Only unity is a solution. But look what they do every day. They don't even push the agenda of African unity. If they want to talk about it, they talk about it in the context of symbolism. They talk about it. They talk about unity as a symbol, right? They even act when they want to act to show unity, they do it as a symbols, but they don't touch the radical or the profound point that can obviously create the unity and give us the power that we need to change our situation. This is the lack of rationality. You understand something, you understand the solution, but you do something else that you know is not going to give you what you need. Look at our leaders. They are still inclined into fake nationalities because they want to be welcomed on red carpets, in Paris, in America, in Beijing. They want to be honored. But these are the symbols, but they know themselves that they don't have power, even though they are being welcomed, with honors in these countries. They know they don't have power to make things happen. So can we at least begin to build rationalities in what we are doing every day? Yes, we can do that right now. And one of the ways to do that is to understand that division is not beneficial to us. These fake nationalities that we have in Africa is not beneficial to us. The only way is that the unity is the key, and we need to begin embracing a paradigm that obviously strengthen our unity as African people. And if you are not aware of the African Continental Unity Party, please allow me to introduce you to the ACUP, which is the African Continental Unity Party. This is a political party that transcends boundaries. We believe that we are not the ones who have engineered the borders that we have in Africa today, whether we talk about psychological borders, because in most cases we look at the physical borders, but we can get rid of them today. But the most important thing is the psychological borders that have been already built in our mind. As we said from the beginning, that if your mind is not yet changed, there's nothing that you can do with your hands that will bring meaningful results. So the change must begin firstly in the minds. So we must get rid of, of psychological borders that we have in our mind, to look at ourselves based on what the Western society or the enemy has defined, in the way that the enemy has defined us. Because the enemy has said that you are a Namibian or you are a Tanzanian, and we begin to look at ourselves in that way. That is not a rationality, because we know it's only when we join our efforts together, then we'll be able to build something good, something that will challenge the power structure of imperialism that is keeping Africa in the conditions in which we are today. So one of the ways we can do this is through the African Continental Unity Party. This is a party that transcends boundaries. We don't recognize ourselves in the paradigm of the Western definition of fake nationalities. We look at ourselves as African people, and Africa is our homeland. Whether you coming, wherever you're coming from, wherever you are in the Caribbean, in America, in Asia, Africa is your homeland. And wherever you are in the East Africa, West Africa, Central Africa, wherever you find yourself, you are at home. And we want to fight to make this a reality of our lives and of lives of our kids. Because if we don't do this, then we are abiding to the ideology of our enemy, and therefore nothing can change in our lives. Another way for you to see that we, from the top level, we are still buying into other person's ideology. We are still working with other people's ideology. Look at the recent conflicts between Russia and Ukraine. There was a General Assembly at the UN to apparently vote to condemn Russia for its military operations in Ukraine. And surprisingly, I think there was only one African country, I'm sure it's Eritrea, or if I'm not mistaken, only one African country that voted no, that voted against that motion. But all the rest, and there were few of those who stepped aside, who stayed neutral, but the most of African nations went with the West to vote on the sanction or to vote against Russia. The question is why? There's an important question. Is there any rationality in that vote that was done by African head of states? It's a very simple question. Was there any rational reasoning or understanding for all these African head of states to vote against Russia at the UN? Why they couldn't vote no, or why they couldn't stay out of that out of that conflict? That is the demonstration of how we are acting with other people's ideology, right? We are acting with other people's ideology. All the actions that we have are inspired by the Western ideology, and we will never develop Africa with the Western ideology. We will never develop Africa with Western ideology, because the Western ideology is based on discrimination, racism, white supremacy, and inequality. Is based on one man for himself. But we, from our ancestry, we are always the people who think in Ubuntu perspective. It means we live for each other. I am because you are, and you are because I am. Right? It affects you as much as it is affecting me. And that is the only way we can go about changing the reality and obviously rebuilding Africa again. Now, to finish, I need to present to you what is the ideology of the African Continental Unity Party from its vision perspective. The vision of the ACUP is to rebuild Africa as a global power base. I'm going to say that again. The vision of the African Continental Unity Party is to rebuild Africa as a global power base. Because why? Power is the essence of life. If you don't have a power, you're going to be crushed. If you don't have power, you cannot look out after yourself. If you don't have a power, you cannot educate yourself. If you don't have a power, you cannot be self-reliant. And the freedom itself begins from the moment you become self-reliant. You cannot talk about freedom if you don't understand the responsibility of freedom. The responsibility of freedom comes with the ability to become self-reliant people. And that's what we need to become in Africa. And that is the vision of the African Continental Unity Party, is to make us a global power base by firstly starting to become self-reliant people. And how are we going to achieve that? It's all in the ACP ideology, and I'm inviting you to join the African Continental Unity Party, to become an active member, so that you and we can all work together to redimension Africa according to its initial ability or capability or dimension, to give its initial dimension and capacity to work as a global power base, because it is the only way we have to go for the rest of the 21st century. We don't have other choice. And if we don't work harder today to make Africa a global power base, we have to decide to make peace with the chains of neocolonialism that is bounding us today. So the other way you can contribute to what we do within the African Continental Unity Party is to please share this video, to like this video and share it with your contacts, so that many people can come to know that we have already an alternative here. An alternative that is not inspired by the Western ideology. An alternative that is not inspired by the Chinese ideology. An alternative that is inspired by African ideology, which is Ubuntu. An alternative that is inspired by African ideology and philosophy, right? And this is the needs here is to achieve power, which is the essence of life. Because when we don't have power, we're going to always be the victims of white supremacy, racism, discrimination, and other things or other ism that we can complain about in life, but we cannot do anything about because we don't have power. So the better thing that you can do after this presentation, that I hope has been meaningful to you, is please to share this video and to like it and to encourage your contacts to get to know what is the African Continental Unity Party, which is a political party anyway, already emerging in Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and other countries, where we hope that we have a chance at this moment to change the reality of African people by coming together and having a Continental Unity Party through which our efforts can be now brought together and create a bigger impact than what we can do individually speaking, because this individual things is not based on rationale, and it's actually justifying the narrative of European people that has deemed us as a people who act by instinct, not by rationality. And you know, other thing in the world that acts by instinct is what? Animal. Animal does not think, it acts with instincts. And the fact that Europeans say that we are acting based on instinct, it was simply means that we are almost acting like animals, because we don't have rationale or rationality of planning and executing. So it's very important that we understand we are living in a moment of danger, but also a moment of opportunities, because danger and opportunities always come together. But we should be able to identify what are the opportunities among the danger of this moment. And when we find these opportunities, must be rational to think and to organize ourselves and to begin to act so that we can achieve whatever we have envisioned in our mind. Let the one who has 2 shoes sell one and buy a sword. The one who has 2 trousers sell one and buy a sword. Because now it is a time of revolution, and this revolution is no longer on streets. It's not even on Facebook, because this Facebook account can be blocked tomorrow or after tomorrow. But revolution is here in the mind. Welcome to the African Continental Unity Party. In peace and power to all of you. Thank you very much. Until then.